All right. Peace and greetings, YouTubers. So I've been watching the 6-part docuseries surrounding the events around Trayvon Martin and his killer, George Zimmerman. I'm not going to give a full review of the documentary because I haven't seen it all yet. It airs in 6 parts. It comes on every Monday on BET at, I think, 10 o'clock. So I'm just going to say what I hope they begin to cover. I don't know if I'm going to review every episode, but we'll see. But basically, from what I've seen so far, let me just say what I hope they start to examine. The thing that's getting me with this is that, in my opinion, they're just lightly scratching the surface when it comes to racism in America. And I'm hoping that they dig deeper. I mean, I hope they get the bulldozer. I hope they get the machines. They start digging. I need them to pull out that machine that digs the tunnel so that you can create the subway systems. I need them to dig that deep. Because, in my opinion, this entire case, this entire story, this entire event is so much bigger than the 2 individuals who were in it. It's so much bigger than just Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman. This is so reflective of society as a whole within this current country, whether it's the judicial system, the laws that we have, and the way that people perceive each other. It's so much bigger. It's symbolic of that. And so I need this documentary to go there. It may make some people uncomfortable, but it is what it is. I'm so over us always having to keep groups of people comfortable when you're trying to push your cause. Sometimes the cause is not a pretty one. Sometimes it's ugly. Sometimes you got to put the good, the bad, and the ugly out there. So I'm hoping they do that, because right now, if the documentary's goal is to capture the empathetic appeals of the audience and make people feel bad that the parents had to go through the trauma, they're doing a great job. Cool, yeah, I'll give you that. It's sad to watch. The music, everything, I'm like, man, this is opening all kind of old wounds. But I need them to go deeper. I need them to really show and reflect what's going on, because a lot of people really don't get it. A lot of people really are convinced that George Zimmerman was correct in his actions. A lot of people are convinced that Trayvon Martin deserved to die. And that doesn't sit well in my spirit. And so I need these people to do this documentary. If you're going to take it on, let's go for it. I need you to roll out all of the tricks, the treats, all of the stops. Let's get it. So let me just say some of the things I hope they do. So like I said, I hope they really pull out the elements of racism, really dissect what was going on in that case. I think when I look back to that era, I think that was a great awakening for a lot of Black Americans, because many Black Americans at the time, and maybe just Americans in general, were in this happy utopian space because, one, Barack Obama was president. There was a Black president. You know, there were a few more Black people on TV as far as television shows. We had just a bit more content than usual, all right? In music, Drake was still doing his Drake thing, and Drake was having a good year, and lots of party tracks we could party to, and things were kind of okay. From the outside looking in, pop culture was great. I think a lot of times we associate pop culture and imaging with the overall heartbeat of the country. So even if the country is in a freaking shithole, if everything looks good on the outside, if pop culture looks like it's fun, everybody's partying together, everybody's fashionable, everybody's planking, everybody's doing whatever challenge is out for the week, all is well. Meanwhile, when you get off the social media, when you step back into the real world, this is the reality that is. And so I think that was a wake-up call for everybody, because with this case, many people had already kind of brushed off the idea of racism when Barack Obama became president. And people are like, oh, everything's good now. It's all fine, it's this, that, and the third, and then the thing that always gets me is when I see like an interracial couple post on social media or something like, oh, look at us ending racism because we're dating. Okay, love is love, that's cool, but that's not ending racism. Okay, can we be a little less shallow? You know what I mean? There's heavier conversations. So a lot of people were just really in this happy land. And so now you have this situation where there's somebody who does something overtly racist. It's in your face. You're seeing the reaction of the world. You're seeing the reaction of the media. You see all the evidence right there. And what happens? George Zimmerman gets off. Not only does he get off, he gets off and trolls everybody. Continues in his shenanigans. So the same George Zimmerman that the defense worked so hard to humanize, where they were able to get half of America to really see, oh my gosh, this poor man was attacked by this out-of-control teenager who sold drugs and was just wild. And of course, remember the media had the wrong pictures of him that they kept pushing out. And so there was this picture of some other kid with gold fronts and some guns, pushing all of that out. And so somehow, after all of that, and you saw what happens, I feel like that was a great awakening for a lot of people. A lot of people were like, whoa, this is not the America I dreamed of. That's that line you always hear people say, not the America not my America. I can't believe it. I'm so hurt. I'm so shocked. And to be honest, I feel like I was one of those same people. I wasn't in a happy land, but I just knew that George Zimmerman was going to get some kind of time. But anyway, back to my point. When you look at this entire situation, the level of racism that jumped out, the amount of people who had so many negative viewpoints about Trayvon Martin. Mind you, they've never met him. All they got was what was fed to them. And somehow, the little bit of information that was fed to them, they took it and ran with it. And goodness, there's so much. But getting to the actual documentary, like I said, I feel like they just lightly scratched the surface. The other issue I'm having is they're not challenging George Zimmerman's side enough yet. I don't like the fact that they've given his narrative and then they've kind of just let it keep flowing, because if somebody doesn't watch the other 5 parts, they're under the impression that, Trayvon Martin walked up to George Zimmerman and was like, hey man, you got a problem? George Zimmerman said, no, not at all. And he said, yo, you got a problem now. And then he just randomly attacked George Zimmerman, and George Zimmerman was so afraid, and then he reached for George Zimmerman's gun and was going to kill him, and that was George Zimmerman screaming, and somehow he was able to get control of the gun, and he just had to shoot him to save himself. And that's what happened. So I'm like, no, we know good and well that's not what happened. In my opinion, I still don't believe half of what Zimmerman, actually all of what Zimmerman said. In my opinion, I think Zimmerman continued to follow that kid. Eventually, he got close enough to that kid where there was some kind of confrontation, and they ended up in some kind of scuffle. I think Trayvon Martin was kicking George Zimmerman's behind. George Zimmerman gives this narrative that Trayvon Martin somehow pulled for his gun. And here's the thing. Trayvon Martin was 17. 17-year-old is not trying to kill anybody because they have their whole life to live. A 17-year-old who literally lives down the street from where everything just happened is not going to be in a position to want to kill somebody from a fight. When 17-year-olds fight, they're not trying to kill each other most of the time, let alone with a gun. That wasn't even in his lane. So in my opinion, that screaming that you heard was not George Zimmerman. I think that was Trayvon Martin. I think Trayvon Martin had the upper hand in the fight, so George Zimmerman got his gun. And when Trayvon realized there was a gun and that fist can't fight bullets, that's Trayvon screaming for help, because George Zimmerman probably had him pinned down or something, or something where Trayvon couldn't get out. Because even if Trayvon just sprinted away, he was still going to get shot. And the fact that Trayvon Martin got like a perfect shot in the heart, to me, that doesn't symbolize somebody who's in a scuffle and they had to reach for their gun and they were able to just shoot. Because in those situations, usually, when you're in some kind of scuffle, based on a lot of these other cases I've seen, and they had to go and they grab the gun and shoot the person, usually it's a random shot to the shoulder. Maybe it grazed the ear. Maybe it hit the side of the neck. Maybe it was the left side of the chest. Not a perfect shot in the heart. So George Zimmerman had the upper hand by the time he had the gun. And pretty much, I think Trayvon Martin had already gave up, like, look, man, I don't want no beef. Zimmerman still shot him. And so I think they need to dig deeper. I hope they do. One of the critiques I had is that they gave, no disrespect to Benjamin Crump and the media, but they gave them too much credit. Because in my opinion, I think social media played a huge role in this crap getting to the media. The media didn't jump on this story until social media brought it up. Social media had been tweeting and posting about this on Facebook for an entire week and a half. Trayvon Martin was trending for 2 straight days, and it had not yet made the news. I remember there was a petition, and people were like, what the heck is up with Nancy Grace? She wanted to spend all of her time talking about Kaylee Anthony and that mess every day and whatever else is going on, but we have yet to see her say anything about Trayvon Martin. The same thing with a lot of the other networks. Nobody was saying anything. Social media blew that up. All these grassroots organizations and people who were tweeting and writing Facebook statuses and petitions and everything, that's when it got to the news. So I'm gonna need them to not give the media that much credit, because in my opinion, with the media, they didn't jump on the story until they realized it was gonna be a ratings catch. Okay, that's why if you watch something like HLN with Dr. Drew, you notice during the entire trial, what did Dr. Drew have every week? He had that panel with the most extreme personalities on there to make some good ratings. You had that Frank Taffy dude who was some racist old white dude who just was ignorant, had nothing to do with the case, knew nothing about the case, was just up there talking. And then you have a few other panelists who was an expert on race, an expert on this. And then you have Shahrazad Ali, who was pretty much the woman who was going to call everything out as she sees it. She was the black woman who was like, nope, absolutely not. This is what it is. And they had that mess on every week. Speaking of that, one of the most entertaining things I ever saw with that show was they had this episode where, I don't know, somehow they were talking about something, and Shahrazad Ali had said, honestly, to be honest, we were better off segregated because at least we had learned how to work together as black people or something like that. And so this other lady, her Twitter handle is like GOP Black Chick. It's this black girl that's a Republican conservative, always saying this crazy stuff about, just racism doesn't exist, black people need to move on, blah, blah, blah. So she says this bit about, Martin Luther King died so that people could live in freedom and blah, 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 blah. And Shahrazad Ali was like, no, he didn't die for that. He died because one of y'all killed him. I was like, this is out of pocket. But anyway, I need him to just address the racism that jumped out. I need him to address, like, if you remember the VMAs when Jamie Foxx wore the Trayvon Martin t-shirt, Jamie Foxx was trending all day. not because people were like, wow, he's standing up for Trayvon. It was because so many people didn't understand the concept and the context of the case and assumed that Jamie Foxx was racist because he was supporting the black kid who almost tried to kill George Zimmerman. That was the narrative that was pushed out there. And so I need people to really I need this documentary to dig deeper, because right now it's too shallow for my liking. I don't need them to spend so much time on the trauma towards the parents, because we know that crap is painful. And I don't need to see them rehash and relive moments that most of us will hope we never have to experience. And that's what got me too, just the lack of empathy from the police. The fact that they can just give the picture like, hey, is this your son? Here's a picture. Do you recognize this? All right, here's the tapes. Come listen to these. Yo, are y'all crazy? And they have too much input from the police in this documentary. Why do we have to hear everything they got to say? Because honestly, they had already washed their hands of the case had it not been for social media blowing it up. Had it not been for the news media catching on to social media blowing it up, and then finally it getting out there, everywhere. They were already done with the case. It was a wrap. So I don't understand why there's so much input from the police on this. And so hopefully what I hope they capture, though, there's a piece I remember from the trial. They had this witness on there who was trying to testify to George Zimmerman's good character. Just because this, like I said, the defense was really trying to paint him out to be the lovable guy next door and make Trayvon look like the crazy idiot, which was another thing I was going to say about the racism. The funniest thing about this case is the prosecution chose to leave race out of the case. And the defense said, no, we'll use the racism. And they used that line about, okay, the crazy cracker dude is following me. And they used that line and somehow made Trayvon Martin look like the most racist, anti-white, killed a man, killed whitey individual in the world. And that gave him probable cause to possibly want to kill George Zimmerman, who's not even technically white. He is Latino. We know there's a difference between ethnicity and race. But George Zimmerman, in his mind, identified as white. That's another conversation in itself. Anti-blackness within the Latino community. That's another conversation, but not for this video. Actually, it will be for this video, but we'll do it for the next one or two. But going back to the case, they had the woman on there talking about his character, and this was around the screams. This conversation was about the screams, and she was trying to convince everybody that was George Zimmerman screaming, and her justification for that was, he used to be a part of a campaign, and we were really excited, and we were at a rally, and we were holding signs, and he was just screaming, and we were yelling. I was like, listen, lady, you know good and well, screams of joy and euphoria for some political candidate that you're supportive of are not the same as screams of agony and fear for your life. You know good and damn well it's not the same thing. And the fact that both of Trayvon Martin's parents could recognize that scream, they're like, yeah, that's our child. But the bit that got me with that was that same woman, when they're like, can you recognize the voice? What did she say? And I know that the defense put this on her. That's Georgie. I said, Georgie? Georgie, really? Yeah, so they pretty much softened all of George Zimmerman's character with that. I swear. I'm not even gonna, I don't know. So I'm hoping that they dig deeper. I mean, for the production value, the documentary is cool so far, but I need them to dig deeper because this is such a bigger case, man. It's so symbolic of just where the country is and where it was and where it's still going. And the funniest thing is, I know there's probably gonna be a bunch of trolls that show up on this video just like they did on my initial video. Like, honestly, I think the worst amount of trolling I ever got on a video on this channel was when I made my initial Trayvon Martin video when everything was first going on. This was before George Zimmerman got charged. I mean, the amount of just trash that showed up in the comments section proves my point about what's going on in this country. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully the next 5 episodes really get there. But I mean, it's 5 episodes, so I feel like they have to. We just can't spend the whole time basking on the sadness. Let's get to the facts of what is. Because there's so much that I want to say. So I don't want to say too much until I've seen the other pieces, even though I still talked to y'all for 20 minutes. But anyway, that's my 2 cents. I suggest you all watch so we can all just talk about it together. Anyway, I'm out. Subscribe.